Well, listen, over the past couple of days, these young people have heard from a huge range of experts on how important water is, how important it is that we don't take it for granted, how we work hard to preserve and engage with our future in as responsible a way as possible in terms of the kinds of things we're going to need to continue to be successful, not just as a society or a civilization, but as a species. And my focus tonight is really going to be trying to wrap it all together, remind them how important it is, but mostly remind them how important they are. Our young people are the ones who are going to be shaping the world we live in. Their idealism, their dynamism, their desire to change, to shift, to improve the world around us is going to be, for me, the difference between whether we're successful through this century or not. The challenges we're facing are massive, whether they be environmental or around poverty or around human rights and conflict. And for me, our young people, with their perspective, with their openness, with their sense of empowerment, they're the reason that we're going to be okay. But we have to make sure as a society that we give them those tools, that we remind them of their importance, and we allow them to shape the world into what it needs to be.
Okay. About a year ago, in the Spain 30th, a year and 2 days ago, the General Assembly of the UN decided that water was a human right, water and sanitation, and Canada abstained from voting. What are your thoughts on water as a human right and Canada's vote?
First of all, it's obvious to me that water is a human right. We cannot live without water. Water is not just the underlying element of life, but in more practical terms, we wouldn't have an economy without water. Whether you're talking about workers or whether you're talking about the air we breathe, the water vapor, and everything we're talking about. It's one of the building blocks to everything we have on this planet. Therefore, we have to understand that it doesn't and cannot belong to any one person. However, the idea of rights needs to be bound up with the issue of responsibility. And one of my tremendous fears is that we're going to get to a point where people will have made poor decisions around water management, will have, polluted or removed water from their watersheds and their ecosystems, and then we'll turn to other people who were better stewards of the resource and say, well, because water is a human right, you need to share it with us, even though they need to be held responsible. But the challenge is, well, was it them or was it a previous generation that squandered the water? So as soon as we start talking about water as a human right, we also have to talk about the responsibility around water. Everyone's willing to talk about rights. Not enough people are willing to talk about responsibilities. So while I agree with it in principle, I think we have to get a little further on before we look at what's going to happen when the Ogallala Aquifer under the Midwest United States goes dry, as it will, and they suddenly turn around and say, okay, well, we need more water. Water's now a human right. Canada's got water. There are conflicts there coming at us that we have to be very wise about heading off.
Kind of leading into that, what do you think about something?
Well, obviously, as soon as bulk water starts getting sold, there's a trigger in there that says if it becomes a commodity, we can no longer regulate it or choose to keep it for ourselves. And that is obviously something that's very scary. And I'm not saying, we have to be jealously guarding our water, but water is one of those things that is territorial by its very essence. It is contained within particular watersheds. And to mess up with that balance, you're running risks of ecological collapse and ecosystem collapse, certainly. So I'm very worried about the commodification of water. I think we do it on a small scale all the time when we allow bottled water companies to draw from municipal water supply for nothing or next to nothing and turn around, package it in fossil fuel bottles and sell it to consumers, whereas it would be free otherwise. I'm not opposed to the idea of making sure that we put a concrete value on water or even a price on water, because once you price something, you don't take it for granted. But we have to make sure that the way we start looking at water is not as an infinitely renewable resource, because even though we have as much water on the planet now as we did 1,000 years ago, as we will 10,000 years in the future, because we're in a closed system, the fact that water may not be accessible, available, or drinkable is something we have to think about every time we pollute, every time we are less than responsible in the very, very finite resource that is available water to us.
Thank you. Just moving, it doesn't have to exclude water, but what would you say are the critical human rights issues in Canada at this point?
Canada's lucky in terms of on a lot of levels. When we talk about human rights, when we talk about our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, our history has that we've done an awful lot of work around recognizing that all human beings have inalienable rights that you can't take away. There are still challenges around extreme poverty. Anyone who doesn't know where their next meal is coming from, anyone who doesn't have access to fresh drinking water, or who is in risk of diseases and epidemics linked to unsanitary sanitation. These are things that shouldn't fit in Canada, shouldn't exist in Canada. I think obviously our native reserves and our native communities that are suffering to a level that is, for me, unconscionable. But more than that, I think the 21st century is going to be one where, certainly in Canada, we can accept that the battle for basic human rights has, with a couple of glaring exceptions, in general been well waged, and we're well on our way to the ideal we'll probably never reach, but credibly so. I think the 21st century is going to be one not of just recognizing the inalienable rights of individuals, but the inalienable value of every individual. That means not allowing kids to grow up with less opportunities, less capacity to fulfill their dreams, whatever they may be, less capacity to fulfill their potential, whatever that may be, simply because they were born in the wrong community or the wrong side of the tracks, or with less advantages than others. But Canada has to be a place that understands that if we're going to succeed, everyone needs to get to play. Everyone needs to be able to participate fully, and that comes with understanding that every single individual has something to offer the world around them.
Thank you. I'm going to take you a little bit back in time and ask if you have any reflections on either the history of the Charter and the Charter.
Every now and then people say, well, we're all children of the Charter. And I say, well, I'm more of a child of the Charter than many. I think that the important thing to understand is any society, any organized community is a balance between individual rights and collective rights. I mean, I give up my right to drive through an intersection anytime I like and obey an arbitrary red light and stop and give up that freedom to drive because I know everyone else is giving up that freedom too when the light is red, so I don't get T-bone going through an intersection on a green light. I mean, that's a simple example of giving up your own particular rights for the good of everyone. But we have to understand that those pressures around individual rights versus collective rights are still playing out. And in Canada here, we're very, very lucky that we do not identify a Canadian as looking a particular way or speaking a particular language or practicing a particular religion, but we recognize Canadians as being a collection of values. So whatever part of the world you come from, if you're willing to buy into respect for each other's opinions, respect for each other's religions, equality of men and women, rights of homosexual couples to marry, I mean the kinds of things that are accepted public values, you get to be Canadian, and we define ourselves. And all those shared public values are fundamentally shaped by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And before that, Diefenbaker's Bill of Rights. I mean, it's not just the 82 Charter that means it, but there's a tradition in Canada of respecting people's rights that is very important still today.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask you one final. Was about youth and that they need to be engaged, and they are engaged. They need to be given the tools. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that? What can youth really do? They often say, well, I'm too young, or I'm just one person, or everyone's passing down this garbage to us, I don't know what to do.
What young people need to understand is it's not about achieving power later in life. They have power right now over a particular corner of the world, whether it's their school or their neighborhood or their group of friends or their family or maybe their workplace where they have a part-time job, or they have the capacity to impact the world around them. And maybe they may turn and say, oh, I don't care about bringing a composting program into the fast food restaurant I work in. I care about bringing peace to Darfur. Okay, but you get to change the world by changing your piece of it. And maybe sometime in the future you'll be able to fix Darfur. I hope you will. But for now, you have to understand that the impact you have on the world around you is every bit as essential as anything else you do. Because the world's not going to be fixed by the waving of one banner by a particular world leader. It's going to happen through incremental actions, through millions upon billions of mindful individuals understanding the impact they can and must have on the world to make it a place that is fairer, juster, and better for all.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.